One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. I am super excited to talk about naming your podcast today, because this is a topic I think a lot of people get stuck on. They're like, well, there are all the words in the universe and I have to just choose a few to name this amazing podcast. So I'm going to give you some tactical things to think about today, as well as some strategies that you can use to come up with the name of your podcast. But I'm also not just talking to brand new podcasters. If you have started and you've been podcasting for a while and you're not loving the name of your podcast, then you can use these strategies to think of a new name or to kind of play around with the idea of changing the name of your podcast if you're not 100% happy with it. But let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Because if you've been thinking about creating a podcast for a while, well, I'm so glad you found this show. Think of this as the shortcut / time-saving version of searching Google and YouTube for hours and hours trying to figure out the world of podcasting. Trust me, as a busy mama of 3, I get it. You don't have a lot of time to be spent or wasted, I should say, searching the web, trying to find all the right ideas and all the amazing things that are out there, and you just end up overwhelmed. Trust me, I've been there, done that, took home the souvenir. But this podcast is going to help you in practical ways, because twice a week we'll be delivering episodes that are going to give you steps to help you create a podcast your audience can't wait to listen to. So let's get right to it, shall we? Have you been wanting to start a podcast? You've been thinking about it. It feels right. You just know this is the next thing that my business needs. Well, I encourage you to sign up for my 5-day podcast bootcamp. This is a thing that you have been looking for. It is a 5-day video series where I walk you through exactly how to start, launch, and market your podcast. And I throw in some more information about planning strategies and being consistent and how you can make the most out of your podcast from day one. So sign up for our 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp at crystalprofit.com/podcast bootcamp. And do it already. You know that you've been wanting to, so just bite the bullet and join us. Okay, I know on the podcast I talk often about, oh, this is a question I see a lot, or this is one I've been asked most recently. Well, the reason why I do this is because I see questions and I get questions almost on a daily, no, it's not almost, it is on a daily basis where people are asking questions about their podcast, how they can get better, how they can get started, and just all the things. And y'all know I'm obsessed with podcasting. So I want to talk about how to name your podcast. And I think that this is something that new podcasters struggle with. But like I said in the beginning, people that have been podcasting for a while who realize that they may need to rebrand kind of deal with this issue too. So just a quick note on that. This podcast, if you have not listened to, I recently updated the trailer for this podcast and it no longer says The Rookie Life because that is what my podcast was originally. And I knew when I rebranded that I needed to have a different name. And the rookie genre, I guess that's what you can call it. The rookie theme. That's probably a better way to say it. The rookie theme that I had been going with for, let me see. I guess I started using that in 2015 when I first started rookiedevotionals.com. That's where this whole journey began, guys. I don't know if I've really shared like everything about this journey, but yeah. Blogger.com. That's where I started my blogging journey. And I had Rookie Devotionals, and then that turned into my book, Rookie Devotionals. And then when I decided to start a podcast, I thought I was still going to stick with the rookie theme. So I picked The Rookie Life. And then and then it was Rookie Podcasting. That is the name of the digital course that I have, which I have since renamed to Profit Podcasting. But I knew I needed to change my name. And in order to do that, I had to follow a few strategies that I'm going to share with you today. So I'm going to address this question as someone who's a brand new podcaster and someone who's thinking about changing the name of their current podcast, because I think it's relevant to both of you, not just kind of a either or one or the other. I think it's relevant to both of you. So there are 4 specific areas of naming a podcast that I want to cover today, and I want to get through them so I can share some specific stories of how those relate to my podcasting journey. So it's almost like a do's and a don't list to work from. So the very first step, are we calling this step first area? I don't know. Just the first thing to know when you're naming your podcast is you want to be specific. And I know I talk about Donald Miller's book all the time, and I know it's because it has been probably one of the best books I've read in 2019, for sure. I'm going to do probably my top 5 books in December. I did that last year. If you haven't checked out that episode, I did my top 5 books of 2018. But his for sure is on the list of top 5 books in 2019 because I've mentioned it so often. I still go back and I will look up something in there. I go to his website all the time and I get references from there. But Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand, it's just so awesome. I don't care what kind of business you have, even if you don't even have a business, but you're trying to convey a message at church or at work. Like, you got to read it. But in the book, he says over and over and over again, if you confuse you lose. And this is one statement that has helped me personally. Oh my gosh, y'all. I have created a better podcast. I have created a clearer website. And I have just cleaned up just so much clutter. Like really, the things that I thought needed to be on my website or needed to be on my Facebook page or on my Instagram or all the other places where I show up online, like it just kind of helped me like to take all the junk away that didn't matter, right? Because I wasn't being specific enough with all this fluff, all these extra words. It's like, well, why would you say, oh, well, I blah, 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 blah in like 4 paragraphs whenever you could say something in a sentence, right? So I feel like you need to be as specific as possible when it comes to naming your podcast because you don't want to confuse people. You or the tagline, like any of that, you want to make sure that you are super specific when you're naming your podcast. And I mentioned the tagline. I'm actually going to do the episode after this is going to be how to create a tagline for your podcast. So I want to stick with just your podcast title. Be super specific, get straight to the point. And then, so that's number 1 is be specific. The second one is don't be cutesy. Oh man, y'all. I can tell you that being part of a lot of online communities, I've seen a lot of very cute, but very confusing names that are out there in the world. And this doesn't just pertain to podcasting. It's the blogging world. It's websites. It's businesses. Like people just try to get really cute and oh my God, don't even get me started on the fonts and the logos that people like. It's a marketing nightmare in my opinion because people are trying to get just too cutesy, like swirly fonts and, you know, really thin lettering that you can't read. Like my thing is if you can't read it on a billboard, and this is so funny, this is a total side note, but because my husband knows how obsessed I am with marketing and we just talk about businesses. Even when we're driving, we're going on a trip. We make a trip once a year out to West Texas to see his family. And it's like 7 hours. It's a very long drive. And if you've ever been from Houston to West Texas, it is a very interesting drive because there's not much to see once you get past a certain point. It's like, okay, you know, you go through the hill country and then it's flat. So we like to look at billboards and businesses because a lot of time, like we're not just on the highway the whole time. We go through small towns and we like to point out businesses that y'all like they're going to be closed in 6 months because their signs are so bad. They're so bad. And I just look at them and I'm like, man, they went wrong somewhere. Like you can't even read it. It would be one of those things like where it's a big sign on the road and you get closer and you're like, I think I can almost read. Oh, we passed it. Like you can't even read it until you're about to pass the sign. So this goes back to being cutesy with the font. And I know we're not talking about artwork today. We will get to that. That's it coming up in another episode. But just keep it simple with the tagline. Don't get all cute and fancy with the name of your podcast, okay? And I know that I think that this, like where people try to get all cutesy is, it comes from like a place of scarcity, right? Because you do have to be careful. I do realize we're in 2019 and blogging has been around for more than a decade. Podcasting has been around for more than a decade. And there are probably a lot of names that are gone that maybe you wanted to use and you don't want to, you know, like, oh, I don't want to step on someone's toes with the copyright or trademark. Like I'm trying to protect myself. But I don't think that you should just come up with magical unicorn names in order to get your point across. Right? You want to like keep things simple. I love that. Keep it simple, stupid. This is the KISS method. Have you ever heard that? I'm sure y'all have heard that before. It's KISS, K-I-S-S, is keep it simple, stupid. And that is literally how I feel about podcast titles for sure. The simpler the words, the better. If you're talking about finances, have the word finances or money or another synonym that you can use in the title of your podcast. Make sure that you have relevant adjectives or other words that are relevant to your topic or your industry, but also add meaning to the value that you're adding to your audience. Whew, I feel like I'm getting on a soapbox today, but you know what? It's got to be said. It's got to be said. Don't be getting all cutesy and fancy because it's not going to work out well for you or your listeners because they're just going to walk around confused and they're not going to listen to your podcast. So you lose. They lose out on your content. Okay, so that is the second thing. So the first one is be specific. The second is don't be cutesy. The third one is try to throw your topic, whatever you're talking about on your podcast, in the name, in the title. So ask yourself, what is the specific topic or industry that your podcast speaks to? Is there a way to throw that name or a synonym or a word that's similar to your topic into the title? So an example is if you talk about yoga, then make sure that you have something related to yoga practices or meditation or health and fitness, right? Like you don't want to have just, finding, I can't even think of, I've seen some really weird ones. I shouldn't do that. Never mind. I'm not gonna call anybody out. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna be that person today. You know what I'm talking about though. When you're scrolling through Apple Podcast and you see something and you're like, what the heck is that podcast about? Y'all know what I'm talking about. So at least have some guiding words that help a listener immediately identify whether that podcast is going to be for them or not for them. Because remember, we can't please everybody, right? And it's okay. It's okay if your podcast isn't for everybody, because if you're trying to speak to everybody, you're going to end up not speaking to anybody. So I wanted to mention one of my favorite tools, and might be shocking, but it's true. One of my favorite tools is the thesaurus. Go to dictionary.com and go to the thesaurus, because I'm always using, I'm totally calling myself out. I use certain words way too much. I'm sure you've noticed this. I say so, I say like, I say just all kinds of stuff. I say it way too much. But in my copy, in my writing, if I notice I'm saying a particular word way too much, then I go to the thesaurus. So if you are trying to find a podcast name and it's already been used, or, it's just the one that you want, just somebody's already taken it. Somebody got to it first. Well, go.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
Find another word, guys. There's so many words in the English language, and you can put them together in different ways to make it, give your own spin on it. Make it yours. And another pro tip, I want to tell you to go back to the SEO for Podcast episode, that one that we recently did. And if you have ideas for your podcast, go Google those topics and see what kind of ideas come to mind. You could probably get a lot of inspiration on how to name your podcast just by looking at, 1, what is already out there, and 2, how you can take a name of a different podcast and put your own spin on it. So that is step number 3, or the area. I can't remember. What did we say? We decided it was the area. So we're being specific. We are not being cutesy. And we are trying to throw the topic in the name if possible. Okay, last one. Number 4. Only include your name, like your crystal profit, right? Only include that in your podcast if it's relevant. So this is another question I get asked all the time is, should I include my name in the podcast title? And my gut reaction is no. No, you shouldn't. Unless you're famous or your name holds some kind of celebrity status, I don't think that it's relevant to your podcast. And now, obviously, there are some exceptions to this, and that is this podcast. I'm not going to sit here and be like an oxymoron and be like, oh, do this, but don't do, like, that's not practicing what I preach, right? But I think, so, this is so funny. I was trying to decide how I was going to tell the story, but whenever I met my husband, right, we were in business school. And when he first told me that his last name was Profit, I did not believe him. I was like, this guy's totally lying. He is just trying to impress some girl, trying to make himself sound cool and all those other silly thoughts, like while he was trying to ask me out. But I fell in love with and 100% embrace the name Profit. I love it that I am a prophet. I think it is come on guys, like what a cool name to have in the business world. So that's why I use it for my podcast. It's because when you talk about business, profit is a positive, like it has a positive connotation in the business world. So that is why I use it for this podcast. And it has nothing to do with myself thinking like, oh, I have some kind of status, because y'all know, no, that is not what this is about at all. But I thought of a blogger that I wanted to use for this example. So she doesn't have a podcast right now. I have a feeling, I bet coming soon, she has an amazing YouTube channel. If you're into crafts or DIY, or you know someone that, like I have a friend she just got a Cricut for, I want to say Christmas last year, or maybe for her birthday. And I've told her about this woman because she is unbelievable. Like she's so talented in delivering videos about how to use a Cricut. And in like under a year, she got 100,000 subscribers on her YouTube channel. Are you joking me? That's insane. Like she is a 7-figure blogger, and it's so cool. But I thought of her because she would be one of the other names that would be relevant to her podcast. But her name is Jennifer Maker Marks. That is her name. But because she is a crafter, she does business under her name, Jennifer Maker. Because maker, crafter, right? Like those are they're synonymous with, they just align so well with her brand and everything that she talks about. So if you have a name like that where you can use a play on words or you can use it within your podcast title, then I say go for it. Why not? I think that it's fun. It's really cool. It's easy to brand yourself that way. But if your name doesn't, then I encourage you to just find a name that aligns with your topic and the audience that you're trying to reach, and maybe try to find an emotional word or two that can keep people really, like, it'll draw them in and have them connected with you, right? Like, I've seen a lot of podcasts that have the words simple in there. So I'm thinking of Kate All. If you're into Pinterest and you want to learn more about Pinterest marketing, Kate All has the Simple Pin podcast. And it's all about Pinterest marketing, and it's so, like, I've binge listened to lots of her episodes because it's so tactical and great advice. But she has the Simple Pin podcast, and her company is I think it's Simple Pin Media is the name of her company. But she uses the word simple, and I mean, what a better way to convey something like, what I'm delivering to you is simple. And then Amy Porterfield's online marketing made easy, right? Because she could just say the online marketing podcast, but she's saying online marketing made easy. That tells me if I listen to this podcast, My life will be easier. My business may be easier. I may be able to get through these projects and all these things in the online marketing world that I want to do. I could do them easier. So try to find an emotional word that you can tie to your podcast name. But I want you to consider one last thing. Try to keep the name short. If you're like me and you love to listen to podcasts, then you'll notice most podcasts have pretty short names. And that's because you can't fit a lot of text on a podcast logo. And again, I'm going to talk about taglines in the next episode. And that is where you can kind of embellish on the other things that you talk about on your podcast. But I suggest keeping it really short and follow it up with a killer tagline. Oh my gosh, y'all, this is so much fun. I just geek out on all this stuff. It's so much fun for me. It's just so much fun. I love to talk about this kind of stuff because I know that these are the questions that you have because I see them all the time in Facebook groups, in my Facebook group. If you haven't joined us, go to the Profit Podcast online community on Facebook and join us there because we hang out and people share their podcast episodes and they share their questions, and it's just a really cool place to connect with other people who are on the same journey as you. But I want to do a recap real fast of how to name your podcast. So the first step, the first area, whatever we're calling it, y'all know what I'm talking about. Be specific. The second is don't be cutesy or fancy with your wording. The third is throw your topic in the name in some kind of way. Try to throw the topic in there. And the fourth is include your name, your personal name, only, I'm going to say it again, only if it's relevant. Only if it's relevant, put your name in there. But like I said, in the next episode, we're going to talk more about taglines. So make sure that you tune in for that. But that does it for this episode. So if this is your first time tuning in, I'm so happy that you're here. I would love for you to subscribe and hear what other fun things we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. Y'all, episode 100 is just around the corner and I still haven't decided what we're going to do. So we've got to figure that out because I'm excited. Like 100, like that's just, it's crazy. And I'm just so pumped. But if you've enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes that we have, I would so appreciate it if you would take a screenshot and share it out on social media. Tag me, use the hashtag #TheProfitPodcast, and I would love it if you would leave us a review. Tell us what your favorite episode has been. Tell us what else you want us to talk about, or just tell us anything that you want to say. I read all the reviews and I appreciate them so very much. Make sure that you sign up for the 5-day podcast bootcamp and check out the other resources we have in the resource library. And of course, the show notes are going to be at crystalprofit.com/episode 92. But remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.